Hey guys, welcome to 3 and Out. You can check out the podcast below in the description. And here's what I need you to do. Make sure you subscribe to the Volumes YouTube channel to stay up to date to everything we're doing here on 3 and Out and the Volume. Rap Sheet talked about Lamar Jackson's contract. And I think a lot of people get consumed with like, a guy's got to sign. We always do this. What? This guy's got to sign. He said that Lamar Jackson might be okay playing this year on his 5th-year option and then going the franchise tag route and then becoming a true free agent. Because knowing the Baltimore Ravens are not going to want to franchise him, right? Because it's such a huge cap hit. So if he could play out this year, have a Pro Bowl type season, he will if he's healthy, he'll be fine. Everyone tries to tell other people what to do. If Lamar Jackson is comfortable playing on the 5th-year option, play on the 5th-year option. What is wrong with that? I know a lot of people in the NFL, because when you're a coach or a scout, a lot of times like you'll be on a 2-year contract or a 3-year contract. And then after the first year or the second year, they want to roll it over. So you just back to on a 2-year contract. So they're always kind of in control of you. And at first, when you're young and new into the business, you just automatically do it because safety, security. And then the older you get, you realize like sometimes they start blocking you. You have other teams that want you. And you realize, man, I don't want to do this. I want to play it out. I want to bet on myself. I will always support people betting on themselves. Now, it's also a little different because he's his own agent. So some people argue, does he know what he's doing? Is he doing the right thing? I just know if he's comfortable with it, it's Lamar Jackson's decision. I just can't wait to watch him play. I'm someone that was not a big fan of him. And I wrote this on Twitter, and I think I mentioned this earlier. Lamar Jackson's mistake at the Combine is that he did not run the 40. Because if Lamar Jackson had ran the 40, there is no way on God's green earth that he falls to 32. I've been in these draft rooms. All these magnets on the wall. When there's a magnet with a guy that runs 4.28 or 4.31, it's just hard for them to stay there very long. And he had some flaws. But we've all watched Lamar Jackson play. If he ran a 40, he's running 4.26. So he just would have probably ended up going in the top 20, and he just would have made more money on this initial contract. Now, at the end of the day, it worked out for him. He ended up on the Ravens, a really good team, and he's in a good spot. But just something to think about. The Eagles story. I remember last year, Nick Ciriani kind of got crushed for playing rock, paper, scissors. And he mentioned in his press conference that he kind of got made fun of for that. But he's like, I'm not, whether it's cheesy or not, I'm trying to gain some sort of advantage when I'm around a guy, i.e. all these players that are coming through. Every single guy that comes through, I just want, if we can gain 2% more of knowledge of his competitive nature, that is a win for me and us. And so this year, he brought a mini hoop. And the first thing you do when you walk into their room, and the way it works at the Combine is they're like, it's like connected to this railroad. If you've never been to Indianapolis, it's a smaller city, still relatively big, but it's all connected by these ups. There are all these, connected bridges that like humans walk through. It's like a huge convention town. And you never have to go outside no matter what hotel you're staying at. And it all leads, you ultimately can walk all the way to the stadium. And next to the stadium is this hotel that has railroad cars for hotel rooms. It's where the players stay. So all the players that come, they stay in these railroad cars. And, it's just like a stretch of train. And it's all broken down individually into rooms. And in those rooms, there are like meeting rooms, and you put all the teams there. So the players just walk out of the room and they go team to team. So you walk into this meeting room and you meet with the Patriots, you meet with the Eagles, you meet with whatever. And when you meet with the Eagles, they have a mini hoop. And the first thing they ask you to do is play horse, basically, best of 5, or best of who can hit the first 5 shots, you versus Ciriani. And Ciriani gave this example of when Gardner Minshew came to the Colts, and in the Colts facility, they must have, a basket, a normal, NBA level 10-foot hoop. And he said, we played horse, and I beat him the first time. And Minshew was pissed. And he was in a suit, and he's like, he ripped off his suit and tie. He's like, can I go shirtless so I can play you a round two? And Sirianni's like, sure. And he's like, I could tell this guy kind of wanted it. And he's like, a couple years later, look, I go to Howie. I'm like, I want to help get him on our team. So you can gain these knowledge. Like, yeah, is rock, paper, scissors kind of stupid? Or shooting on the mini hoop kind of stupid? But here's what I did take away from that. I do respect doing anything humanly possible to gain, is this guy competitive? Because ultimately, once the season starts, you're all in a bunker together. And does the guy have competitive nature like he's George Kittle? Or does he have a competitive nature like he's Kyler Murray and just kind of over it? Are you ready to go to war with this guy like, he is Tom Brady? Or, Mike Evans? Or, Jason Kelce? Or Travis Kelce? Or are you going to get one of those guys like Amari Cooper, like, I'm kind of too cool for school. I'm not really into it right now. Because the ultimate goal of this sport is obviously to win Super Bowls, but it's to win playoff games and to win big games. And you need to find out about that. And let's face it, there is no way that you perfectly can find out about it. You won't truly know. You can study the film, you can scout the college, you can ask all the questions to people at the university, but until you're around the guy, especially at that level, once you start getting paid, you never know till you got him. So you should do everything humanly possible to uncover every single rock to find out, is this guy a war daddy? Can I go to battle with this guy? Will this guy go to battle with me? Will this guy not tap out? And I respect it. It's a little unconventional. It's a little cheesy. But sometimes, if you have to be cheesy to gain an advantage in your industry, shit, I'll be cheesy right now. I'll say something cheesy if it'll get me 50,000 more listeners. I don't care. And I understand it. Because I didn't really understand the rock, paper, scissors. But when I heard him talk about it in the mini hoop, I was like, okay, I kind of get it. I definitely kind of get it. Another story this week is on Amari Cooper. And I was around Amari Cooper when he came to the Raiders. And I was a huge Amari Cooper fan out of Alabama. Who wasn't? Fantastic route runner, productive player, very talented. But there's just something with him that leaves you wanting more. It feels in a weird way for a guy that's very productive like he's an underachiever. And all the stories out of the combine is they're going to trade him or they're going to cut him if he will not take a pay cut. They're not paying him $20 million a year. And I understand if you're Steven and you're Jerry and you're Mike McCarthy and you just, this season they were really good and coming down the stretch. It's just sometimes it feels like Amari Cooper's not really that into it. And it's hard. If you're paying Amari Cooper $12 million, who cares? He's good enough that you don't worry about it. But when you start paying him premium dollars and you play in these big games and you feel like, is he all in? Can we go to quote-unquote football war with this guy? Because if we can't, then, we need to use this money. We need to allocate these resources somewhere else. I was listening to Howie this week, and he had a good point. He's like, every single team here has the same amount of resources. We just choose to allocate them differently, right? Obviously, coming into, the Rams no longer have picks. The Eagles have 3 picks, but everyone starts at the same baseline. The Rams just chose to allocate their resources, 2 picks for Matt Stafford, 2 picks for Jalen Ramsey. The Eagles chose to trade back in the draft and accumulate more picks. Every single team has the same amount of money to spend on the salary cap. You can choose to pay Amari Cooper $20 million. You can choose to pay Matt Stafford $45 million. You can choose to do whatever you want with your resources. But don't get it twisted. Every team in the league has the same exact resources. The reason the Giants have 2 picks is because the Bears chose last year to use another first-round pick to go up and get Justin Fields. Now, ultimately, you're judged on how you allocate those resources. And that, to me, is the most fascinating time or a part of this time of year. How you're going to allocate your free agent resources, how you're going to allocate your draft resources. And, the best GMs separate themselves when they're doing that. Look at Dave Gettleman. I don't know if you saw today, but Saquon Barkley is on the block. And the going rate right now for Saquon Barkley is a 4th-round pick. Now, granted, he got hurt. And he has not been the same since. Right? But they used the number 2 overall pick on a running back. Number 2 overall pick on a running back. And now his going rate, 4 years later, or 3 years later, 4 years later, 3 years later, is a fourth-round pick. Because part of it is like, well, he's going to be up for a contract soon. He's not even that good anymore. Like, that is poor. That is a very, very poor job of allocating resources. That is dumb. That is bad business. That's stupidity. It's like when the Jaguars took, and Leonard Fournette became a good player on the Bucs. They used a 4th overall pick on the guy. Like, you can't do that. That's dumb organizations for smart organizations. And, you know, Amari Cooper, I give the Cowboys credit. Like, hey, man, we're not paying you $20 million. That's not going to fly. Now with that, you know, laissez-faire effort. But that's who Amari Cooper is. I mean, it's part of why Gruden, you know, he's a weird player. I like him, but I don't. Arizona, they obviously extended Kliff Kingsbury and Steve Keim. I don't think they really had a choice. They were just, I mean, what are they going to do? I mean, you could have justified firing them. But I think an underrated part about being an NFL owner, the last thing in a million years you want to do, if you don't have to, like the Giants had no choice, right? The Jags had no choice. Certain teams have no choice. But, you know, the Cardinals ultimately won 11 games. You don't want to go on a coaching search and a GM search. Do you know what a pain in the ass that is? We talk about the draft being a 50-50 proposition, right? You never truly know until you get them. Imagine what coaching and general manager hiring is. You know, I think this guy interviewed great. I think this guy's going to be a great head coach. And then he bombs. That happens all the time. So if you're an owner and you feel comfortable, you're like, you know, I trust these guys, especially Steve Keim. You know, I feel comfortable with him as my general manager. It's easy to lean on the side. Yeah, I'll just extend them. At least the status quo, you know, we're competitive. I've seen this team when I was young and my dad and the franchise be a joke. I get it. But I would also say to those guys, I would entertain trading Kyler Murray. I would short Kyler Murray because we know the Washington football team has called every single team in the league. I don't blame them. The Washington football team is desperate. You know, it's weird because right now no one works. I'm fascinated by all these people that didn't go back to work, in which I'm all for. Like, if you leave a job you hate, even if it was forced because of COVID or you got sent home, you know, right, to work from home and you realize you hate the job, I've been there, done that. I went on, started my own thing. I have nothing but respect for anyone that wants to do that. But obviously not every single person can be an entrepreneur, right? Eventually, some of these people got to go back to work. What are all these people doing? I know when I was out of work the first time when I got fired in the NFL, I spent like 3 months just super desperate, calling, emailing, doing everything humanly possible to try to get jobs in like 3 different industries, right? I was just relentless. I was desperate. You know, and that's kind of feels like the football team right now. They got no quarterback. They have no hope in sight of getting a quarterback. There are no quarterbacks in this draft, and they just feel desperate. So they're calling every single team. It's like, oh, they called the Chiefs about Mahomes. Rivera was with Andy Reid at the Madden thing. Like, I doubt that was as serious as it sounds, but I wouldn't put it past him. You know, he did have a weird end of the season. But what are they supposed to do? Just not call anybody, keep their fingers crossed? You might as well. You got nothing to lose. It's like when you don't have a job, you got nothing to lose. You got to do something. You eventually got to pay the bills. Like Ron Rivera eventually needs someone to throw some touchdowns. Because if he can't get a quarterback, he's going to be out of a job. And his head coaching career is going to be over. It'll be done. He'll never be a head coach again. This is his last shot. So, Arizona, could you get Ron Rivera to trade you 3 1s and 2 2s? And sign like Marcus Mariota and just kind of figure it out and reload your team? Now, obviously, Kyler Murray is better than Marcus Mariota. But if I get 3 1s and 2 2s, knowing that the Washington football team would pay Kyler Murray and almost like shorting Kyler Murray. Like, you see his attitude, see he's not that into it. That was when he was trying to get paid. That was his attitude. Now you pay him, maybe he won't even care. Maybe the football team will win 6-7 games. All of a sudden, you're getting good picks. And Kingsbury, with his spread offense, could you win with Marcus Mariota? I would be asking myself that right now. Because now I got some job security. And clearly the owner's not that big on him. I would be entertaining that move. Because you know the football team. And even if Ron Rivera didn't love Kyler Murray, I'd call the owner. I'd call Snyder and say, hey, man, I got something for you. I wanted to bounce something off you. Sit down for this one, buddy. Because I got something that might intrigue you. The Dolphins. Chris Greer, the Dolphins general manager, said that get a sip of water here. Still on the mend, still on the mend here. Throat's battling. Chris Greer said that the door is shut. I think that's it's exact quote. The door is shut on Deshaun Watson. I think the Dolphins are an underrated, just kind of consistent clown show. Like, it's just, what a weird, bizarre franchise. I mean, seriously, what just a weird place. And I went to Miami for the first time a couple years ago for the Super Bowl. It was awesome. It was really cool. Love the city. But something is just off with that place. And I don't believe this guy for a second because I don't think it's his call. Now, I don't know if the owner likes Deshaun Watson or not, but the owner's going to do whatever the hell he wants to do. He's been consistently doing that now since he's owned the team. So Chris Greer, Mike McDaniel, you guys have no juice. If the owner wants Deshaun Watson's going to be on the team. It's like I said, if I was Arizona, I would call Dan Snyder. I would call, if I was Arizona and I wanted to get a bunch of picks, I'd call the Dolphins. Hey, man. Hey, Steven, I got something for you. Wanted to bounce something off you. Just a franchise that just feels, what an underachieving franchise. It's really just a bizarre place. Something about the Miami Dolphins, who, when I was a kid, I mean, they were a really big deal, obviously with Dan Marino. And before I was born, with the Shula, the undefeated team, and they were awesome in the 70s, good in the 80s. I mean, the 90s, Marino's doing movies with Jim Carrey. They were a really, really big deal. And now they kind of feel irrelevant. It's kind of crazy. Mitch Trubisky. This is a story that's been making its rounds this week. Sometimes I just don't understand things. When people work in public jobs and they fail, like really spectacularly fail, and it goes really, really poorly, if you just go away for a little bit, just disappear off the radar, or even are still on the radar but are doing something different, somehow your value comes back without you doing anything. It's really kind of nuts, right? It happened to John Gruden. John Gruden was run out of Tampa. It was a disaster. Couldn't have gotten any worse. And he quit coaching, went to Monday Night Football, and all of a sudden, probably 5 years into Monday Night Football, every single team for the next 5 years trying to hire him. Colleges, pro teams were doing everything humanly possible to get their hands on John Gruden. Even though if you just peel back the onion and you look, well, what was it like as a coach, not as a broadcaster? Like, he was not good at the end in Tampa. Yet everyone forgot about it. Every single person. Hell, even I kind of did. I was like, shit, I'd hire Gruden. Shit, Tennessee, USC, the Colts, the Raiders. Gruden's going to kick ass, take names. Then he comes back, and it feels like, John Gruden was pretty overhyped. John Gruden was definitely overhyped. I remember thinking, like, we're going to get the offensive version of Bill Parcells, and it was nothing like that. It was, for the most part, a disaster. And I'm not even talking about before he got fired or whatever. I'm just talking about the on-the-field product, his moves, his just team. It underwhelmed. It really did. And I think Mitch Trubisky, who we literally watched for 4 years on the Chicago Bears, is just not that good at football. And I saw Brandon Beane, who had a really good press conference, and he was asked about him. And he brought up his character. And he basically said, like, I'd let and this is a, scouting term, like, they say everyone in the program says he's a type guy you'd want your daughter to marry. When someone says that, he's a type guy you want your daughter to marry, that's just like premium character, right? That's just like high level, salt of the earth, doesn't get any better as a human being. And everyone's like, Mitch Trubisky. No one ever questioned Mitch Trubisky's character. Mitch Trubisky was known as a good, high-level guy. I know, obviously, new people in Chicago. They love the guy. His work ethic, how hard he tried. He did not fail from lack of effort, lack of trying, lack of, character. He failed because his physical tools, he's not an accurate passer. He's not a natural thrower of the ball. He doesn't have accurate touch on basic NFL routes between certain coverages. He's just not a very good quarterback. And I do think he found his role as like a $3-4 million backup. Yet there are people on social media and the buzz of the combine is like, there might be a market for Mitch Trubisky to be a starting quarterback. If Mitch Trubisky is your starting quarterback in 2022, your team is not going to be very good. Mainly because he's not very good at playing quarterback. He's a good guy. He's good in press conferences. He's good in the whole thing. He's just not a very good player, which is normal. There aren't a lot of good quarterbacks. He actually is much more normal than an outlier. The outliers are Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, right? Those Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers. Those guys are outliers. Most quarterbacks that come in the NFL are Mitch Trubisky. Not very good. There's nothing wrong with that. And Mitch could have a 10-year career making $4 or $5 million. He could rack up another $50 million. He goes to start. The worst thing you can do when you're a backup quarterback is play. Because the moment you start playing, you get exposed. And the moment you get exposed, the quicker we run you out of the league. Because, people like me, we start talking shit about you in the sense of you're not good enough. Obviously, what I say doesn't necessarily matter, but all the fans know, definitely the GMs, and definitely the coaches know. Chase Daniel never has to play. That's how he keeps cashing them checks. He doesn't get on the field. He's smart. He avoids the hard part of the position, a.k.a. playing. He just studies, good teammate, mentors. It's a good move. I saw John Schneider. You see, a lot of these GMs and coaches, they talk at the main press conference at the combine, and then they also, but anyone can go to that. But then they also throw their guys a bone. Like they will go to they gather all the local guys and they kind of go off to the side and they just kind of get into the nitty gritty. And I saw John Schneider did that with the Seattle guys. And one of the Seattle guys asked him about Russell Wilson and the trade. And John just kind of said, well, anytime a rumor comes out, like last year when the rumor came out about the 4 teams, my phone blows up. This year, the trade deadline, my phone blows up. Obviously, the start of this offseason, my phone blows up. I'm not calling anybody, but they're all calling me. And he's like, I have to listen. It's my job, but we don't intend on trading him. If Russell Wilson wants to get traded, I've been saying this over and over and over again. All he has to do is put out the bat signal. I want out. I think they'll trade him. They keep saying they don't want to trade him, and they don't. Because as of right now, he hasn't said he doesn't want to be there. But if he forces his way out, I do think these guys would be open to move him just because they're kind of tired of the drama. Now, is that the right football move? No. Can they ever improve on Russell Wilson? No. But if he comes out and has a distinct NBA level, I do not want to play here, the offers they would get would be stupid. I think the Eagles would offer him 3 first-round picks this year, 1 next year, a 2, and Jalen Hurts. You can reset your entire franchise. And if you're John Schneider, you plan on being there for another decade. So it's kind of in Russell's hands. Because clearly the league thinks something weird is going on. Because he didn't say anything this trade deadline, and John Schneider's phone started blowing up on the trade deadline. It's just a bizarre situation to watch. And I've been saying forever, it's hard to trade the best player in the history of franchise. I agree. But if I'm John and he just makes it bro, I do not want to be here anymore. I'm not going to resign here long term. And you can get some sweet offers of 4 first-round picks and a 2 and just a quarterback to hold you over. It would cross my mind. The last but not least, just watching a lot of these general manager press conferences, one thing is key or clear in this league, which I think is very key just moving forward. And I think most, basketball, baseball have done this too. You need the day and age of meathead GMs. They can't handle press conferences, can't be good spokesmen for your team. Same goes for coaches. It's kind of done. Listen, Belichick doesn't speak in press conferences because he doesn't care. It's not because he's not smart and articulate. Right? You have to be able to get up in front of a press conference and represent the team. Now more than ever. With social media, with the power of YouTube. And I saw so many general managers, especially a lot of the young guys, that could just get up there and hold their own. They were comfortable. I thought the Giants guy is really impressive. For a guy, who's my age, 36, 37 years old, first-time GM, and just gets up there and kind of can hold court. It's just this is what you want. And this is what they did not have with Dave Gettleman. You have to, not even necessarily quote-unquote look the part, but you got to be able to handle the part. And a lot of these questions are coming fast and furious. All the questions are on your quarterback and moves. And you got to be able to be personable, but also like balance the cliches to not give too much, but also kind of give the media enough where they're not on your back. You know, and I thought a lot of these guys, you know, maybe it's just going to be a younger generation. We've grown up just watching more of this. We just know it matters, probably now more than ever. I just think that a lot of the new age general managers are going to be much more equipped, because forever, a large part of my life, like in the 90s or the 2000s, sometimes a guy would get a job and he'd have no shot. He couldn't communicate. You get him in front of the press, you'd put a camera in front of it, and it was like, what the hell is this? And maybe he was a good coach, maybe he was schematically pretty good, but he couldn't communicate. Maybe communicate with his players or not, but if you can't communicate with your fans, the people literally paying for everything, even if you're not giving them that much, you're going to get run out of town quicker. So the better you can be in front of a microphone, and again, the bar's not that high. You don't need to be Bill Parcells, you know, and you don't, but you can't be Bill Belichick. Like that is never going to happen again. That's not going to be allowed, because there's never going to be a coach that won 6 Super Bowls. Like that's over. He could act like that. One, he's from a completely different generation. And then by the time everything changed with, you know, social media and just press conferences and the importance of them, he had so much equity, it didn't matter. But you can't act like that now. Those days are done. And I bet sometimes these GMs don't want to, you know, always talk, or part of it is you got to play the game a little bit. It's like I'm critical of Brandon Staley because I think he plays the game too hard. But I think he knows what he's doing, because he's a smart guy. I actually watched him a little bit with Pat McAfee, and it was like, I felt like he was talking normally. I'm like, Staley, why don't you talk like this normally? And part of it is, I bet Pat is just part of when you're in front of the big J's, you know you can play the big J's like a fiddle. You know, it's so predictable what they'll eat up and what they'll love and what they'll hate. So you can just play him like a fiddle, and he does. But he was with Pat, and he just acted like a normal guy. It was the first time I ever saw him like, Brandon Staley can just not be a robot. It was like, you know, if Russell Wilson could just talk like Tom Brady, like, oh, he's just talking like a normal guy. But Russell can't. Brandon, I think, I saw a glimpse. I was like, oh, I think I actually might kind of like this version. But then I saw him with Schrager, and he's a little cheesy. But that was NFL Network, because he knows, you know, a lot more people. Well, actually, I mean, a lot of people were watching McAfee too, but it's a lot of dudes and bros. You know, NFL Network maybe thinks it's a different crowd. But, so there's a balance of it. But I do think that that's something that's very, very important to obviously the owners and the team presidents. I need a good spokesman, because we're always selling. This is such a big business. If you turn on CNBC in the morning, you know, depending on the day, obviously the last couple weeks has been like war stuff with Ukraine, but in normal times, they have on just different CEOs of different companies. Right? Anyone listening to this that's in the finance world, like I tell you CNBC, you like laugh at me. You guys watch Bloomberg TV or whatever. I'm not, you know, it's like a little background noise. Keep it basic, my finances. And they'll have on CEOs. And sometimes there'll be a CEO and you're just like, God, this guy is not very good on the camera, which is just not ideal. You just want to get the guy leading your company, whether it's, you know, the boss, whether it's the head coach, whether it's a GM, they can just handle themselves right in front of a camera. And no one's looking for perfection. You don't need to have you don't need to be Sean McVay, be able to host a podcast. And, you know, he's the best case, or Tomlin. But you do need to have some shit to you. You do need to be able to, like, crack a couple jokes. Like, does Andy love doing press conferences? Probably not. You know, but does he understand, you know, it's part of the game, and does he know how to throw a couple zingers to keep everyone laughing and enjoy it? Yes. It's not that complicated. And luckily, like I said, I think the NFL is lush with a lot of these guys, especially the younger crew of getting these GMs that get it. And like I said, the analytical movement of all these GMs and all these young guys, all these measurements and times and broad jumps, that is analytics. So when you see a guy had a 40-inch vert or a 20-inch vert or whatever, any of these things that they're doing that has a quantitative, number next to the activity, right? Vert, broad jump, 40, 3-cone, whatever. That is analytics, and that is used to comp everything. No different than the real estate and the square footage. And I just don't understand why people don't get that. And I listen to Daniel Jeremiah's podcast the last couple of weeks. There was an attack on the combine. Like people wanted to, basically cancel the combine. The combine has a lot of value. Like it is valuable to watch Garrett Wilson be the best wide receiver on the field in a loaded wide receiver draft. It's valuable to watch Carson Strong, who's kind of a throwback quarterback from Nevada that can't really move, have a massive arm and see that in person. If you and I, let's say, are prospects at the University of Washington, and we're second, third round, I'm a DB and you're a wide receiver, and we have our pro day, and the pro day is about to happen. Well, there might be 4 other pro days going on that day. Ohio State may have one, Florida might have one, and Texas A&M might have one. I'm not going to get every decision maker at my pro day. I don't even care if I'm at Alabama or Ohio State. Now, I'm going to get more at those, but regardless, it's going to be spread out. And some guys don't travel. It's hectic time. The combine is literally the one time when every single GM and every single head coach, beside McVay and Kyle Shanahan, are there. Every single one. And every scout, every assistant GM, they're all sitting there watching you work out. Have you ever interviewed? If you want to interview, you'd be like, who do you want to interview? The boss? The guy making the decision? Any salespeople listening to this? Like, who do they teach you to go to? The gatekeeper? The decision makers? You never want to talk to someone that's not a decision maker. Why? Because you're wasting your time. That's why you always butter up the gatekeeper, right? Which, all you guys that recommended Dope Sick, if you want to get to the doctor to sell them that Oxycontin, you got to go through the secretary. So, you give her some flowers, you give her a mani-pedi, you take care of her. That's business 101. If you want to get to someone with a secretary, you butter up the secretary. You got to go through the gatekeeper, and that's usually the gatekeeper, right? Well, the decision makers are right. There is no gatekeeper. If I'm, a player and trying to get a hold of Mike Tomlin, like I got to call the office, Mike Tomlin's sitting there watching me play or run around. Name me a better interview in the history of America than what happens at the combine. They already know you. They already have the information, and then they get to watch you work out. Sounds like a pretty good gig to me. Sounds like a pretty good deal. People always talk shit about the combine. And listen, is it a little... I also think props to Roger Goodell. Put that thing at night. What a genius move. Is there a chance that the NFL combine is going to outrate the NBA games tonight? Because I think there is. I would imagine that the NFL combine in prime time is going to do an outrageous rating. When you just factor it in, it's people running around in shorts and T-shirts. Think about that. If a couple million people watch people run around in shorts and T-shirts, the power of the NFL really is mind-blowing. If it gets like 100,000, then maybe I'm just a nerd and I was watching it with not many people. But I doubt that's the case. I would expect this number. We'll see if it gets Brooklyn, Miami Heat. What did the combine or Brooklyn, Miami Heat? What event had more eyeballs? Fascinating to watch. Appreciate everyone listening, battling through. Still on the mend here with my throat. Bronchitis, no big deal. Battled through. Didn't miss one podcast. See everyone later. Subscribe to the pod. Share it with your friends. Grassroots. Have a great weekend. Peace. Thanks for watching 3 and Out. You can check out the podcast below in the description. And make sure you subscribe right now to the Volumes YouTube channel.